Unfortunately, I am unable to attend in person due to COVID. However, thank you for listening to my presentation on in-stream flow methodologies to evaluate Clear Lake Hitch passage and tributaries of the Clear Lake watershed. To provide a brief background, Clear Lake Hitch is listed under the California Endangered Species Act as a threatened species. Clear Lake Hitch passage is a known concern in tributaries of the Clear Lake watershed. In addition, Governor Newsom signed Executive Order N-5-23, which directs the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and State Water Resources Control Board to evaluate in-stream flow needs to protect Clear Lake Hitch. Therefore, together with my team here at CDFW, we designed the fish passage study with the goal of characterizing stream flow and habitat relationships for Clear Lake Hitch. Our objective is to develop hydraulic habitat models in the Clear Lake watershed. Together, we'll collaborate with our government partners, which includes California Native American tribes, local, state, and federal entities. We're grateful for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians Environmental Protection Agency, along with Flow West, who have developed a hydraulic habitat model on Adobe Creek. We've worked closely with them and additional government agencies to expand to the model development in the Clear Lake watershed. Together, to do this, we identified 6 creeks, which are Middle, Scott, Manning, Adobe, Kelsey, and Coal Creeks. And again, for each of these models, we'll develop hydraulic habitat. For each of these creeks, we'll develop hydraulic habitat models. A hydraulic habitat model has various components. For simplicity, let's consider each component. I'm going to have some animations here, so hold on a second. Hydraulic relating to or referring to water moving in the stream, shown here in blue. Secondly, habitat, the environment the Clear Lake Hitch live in. That's kind of shown here in this kind of brownish orange and green here to illustrate the vegetation. And lastly, the word model, which is an informative representation of a creek in the Clear Lake watershed. Together, we input the hydraulic and habitat data into the model to simulate conditions. For example, we'll use a specific flow to project depth and velocity. To develop this model, we use various tools to obtain the data. We have various methodologies, which at the beginning of April this year, my team and I have been out in the Clear Lake watershed collecting data. For the hydraulic component, we have collected discharge, water's edge, and validation measurements consisting of depth and velocity. For the habitat component, additionally, we've collected pebble count surveys and contracted with NV5 Geospatial to capture high resolution light detecting and ranging, or what we call LiDAR data. With all this data, we're working to build the model itself, which will use the U.S. Army Corps Hydraulic Engineering Center's River Analysis System, HECRAS. For each of these methodologies, we use standard operating procedures to ensure our data are legally defensible. Excuse me. I'm now going to dive a bit deeper into what each of these methodologies entails, with the first being discharge or stream flow is the volume of water that passes a specific point in a river or creek in our case per unit time. It's typically measured in cubic feet per second. We measure the width, the depth, and the velocity. What's great about the Clear Lake watershed is how many existing stream flow gauges are available and also in real time. We will use this stream flow gauge data. However, we collect additional discharge in locations at each creek when a gauge may not be present, or to confirm discharge measurements. To do this, here, let me get my laser pointer here. Almost there. Together with my team in the field, we collect the depth in a subsection, the width, and the velocity in each of these cells. Then we get a total discharge by the sum of each of these subsections to obtain total discharge, excuse me. In the field, this is what it looks like. Our goal is to first find representative sites that are reasonably straight, uniform, and regular shape. Then we set up a tape measure across the creek to help get the width. A USGS top-sitting weighting rod is used to capture the depth. On the rod itself, a flow meter sensor is attached and connected to a handheld device to calculate the velocity. We typically measure across this creek at least 20 times, or 20 subsections, excuse me. Measurements and calculations are recorded both on the hard copy data sheets and on the handheld device while we're in the field. Then in our office, we will follow additional quality assurance guidelines. The discharge overall helps us simulate the model at known streamflow measurements. Other hydraulic data we collect are water's edge. To get the water's edge, we use a real-time kinematic global positioning system to capture precise locations along the stream, in this case, the edge of the water. Water's edge helps us calibrate the hydraulic habitat models when simulating known stream flow measurements. Additionally, we collect validation measurements consisting of depth and velocity. We use the same tools that we discussed already with the weighting rod, flow meter, and RTK. However, the validation measurements help us assess the predictive capability of a 2D hydraulic model. Next, we collect the additional habitat data to better understand the Clear Lake Hitch's environment. Woman pebble count surveys are done to understand the grain size distribution at various representative sites. To do this, a gravelometer is used as pictured in the top right. In the pictures below, scientists from our team collected 100 randomized samples at each site. Overall, this information is to help estimate spatial streambed roughness in our models. Next, we hired NV5 Geospatial to collect LiDAR data. LiDAR data is pretty remarkable technology to capture topographic or terrain data, along with bathymetric the underwater data. Together, it gives us a high resolution with a goal to help us understand from the Clear Lake Hitch's perspective what the habitat they live in. Essentially, it's a laser attached to an aircraft, in our case, to help us understand the elevation. Additionally, aerial imagery was also collected, which is shown in the next slide. Here is an example of LiDAR data on Scotts Creek. On the left is an image we captured in the field. On the right is an image from the LiDAR data. Red indicates higher elevation, and the light green represents lower elevation, which makes sense here. By understanding the elevation data along with other data types, we can simulate stream flow at different conditions to predict depth and velocity in each of these habitats. We just got this LiDAR, and we are very excited to have it. So you can imagine we have a lot of data to process. Which leads me to our current steps, where we've collected 37 river miles of data. The image on the right illustrates how many data points we have collected over the last few months. I realize it's kind of hard to see, but what I'm trying to convey is that it's a lot of data. We have about 40 discharge measurements, over 1,000 water edge points, over 500 validation points, about 30 pebble count surveys completed, and over 50 river miles of LiDAR data. So as you can imagine, we are currently processing a lot of data. Throughout our data process, we're following our quality assurance plan, which entails various quality control checks to ensure the highest quality data. I mentioned it earlier, but all of our data collected and processed follows standard operating procedures. In terms of next steps, we'll collect additional survey data, continue following our quality assurance plan, from the data analysis and calculations, and to develop and build our 2D models so we can run simulations to better understand stream flow and habitat relationships for the Clear Lake Hitch. Together with all this information, we'll develop a technical report with our results. We'll continue collaborating, coordinating, sharing the information we obtain. And to wrap up, I'd like to acknowledge my team and others in our agency within the Water Branch, Region 2 Office, Conservation Engineering, and Fisheries Branch. And thank you again to all of our government partners who worked on work closely with us, designing or being in the field for the study. Lastly, thank you for the Clear Lake community for welcoming us and listening to my presentation today. I am sad I cannot be in person, but please send any questions or email to myself or the Instream Flow program. Thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. Best, Jenna.